EMDR seems to be especially good at preventing people from being overwhelmed. In fact, that seems to be the therapeutic trick. And I've got some theories as to why this would be the case. And it has to do with the nature of what's called bilateral stimulation, which is the eye movements, a form of bilateral stimulation. Bilateral stimulation creates what's called a dual focus of attention. Now, a single focus of attention, let's say if I got you just to get in touch with, mentally get in touch with the worst memory that you've got. Close your eyes. Don't do this, by the way. I'm not asking you to do it. But imagine if I was asking you, close your eyes. Go back to that worst experience, the worst moment. Get back in touch with the sights of it, the sounds, the smells, the physical sensations, the emotions, the thoughts that went along with it. Block out your awareness of everything outside of your imagination. Just simply purely go back. That's a pure internal focus of attention. Now, if we're talking about you getting internally focused on a traumatic experience, there's a really good chance that this internal focus is simply going to re-traumatise you. And as I said, there's nothing therapeutic about being re-traumatised. Another option is a total external focus of attention. If I got you to stand next to a busy street, empty your mind of all thoughts and just simply look at the cars going backwards and forwards, just simply looking at the traffic, and that's not going to do anything therapeutic either. It's not going to re-traumatise you, but there's not going to be anything useful that's going to come out of that. And that's a total external focus of attention. EMDR, through the bilateral stimulation, seems to create what's called a dual focus of attention. So when I'm asking you those questions about the bad experience, you're becoming internally focused. Once that internal focus has been created and activated, then I provide you with an external focus of attention. And if I see you becoming more internally focused, I will draw your attention back to my hand, just say follow my fingers backwards and forwards, stay with my hand, keep on watching my hand go backwards and forwards, and I'll keep on drawing your attention to the external, to what for you is external, my hand going backwards and forwards. Now, why does this seem to be helpful with anything? Why is this therapeutic? It comes back to being basically some structures within our brain, and we can think of our brain as being divided into several groupings within. And fairly deeply set within our brain is a set of structures which are together referred to as the limbic system. It's the limbic system that is largely responsible for many of our strong emotions. Below the limbic system is part of the brain called the brainstem, which sits on top of the spinal column. So on top of the spinal column is the brainstem, also referred to as the midbrain, and on top of the brainstem is the limbic system. Now the brainstem is responsible for many of the basic biological functionings that keep us alive, so keeping our heart pumping, our lungs breathing, our blood circulating, etc. And I've read in neurology books that if somebody is brain dead, which basically means through a car accident or whatever, they've received such an amount of damage to their brain that the emotional parts of the brain, the limbic system, and the thinking part of the brain, the neocortex, have been destroyed. And the only part of the brain still functioning is the brain stem sitting on top of the spinal column. And the person is still alive because the brain stem is still able to function. And this means that the only thing really going on for them is that their brain stem is able to keep their heart pumping and the lungs breathing and food being digested. The basic biological functionings are still working. Now, if this person is lying in a hospital bed, they will never have another thought or another feeling or another emotion again in their lives, as long as they're alive. They will never have any awareness of anything, but the brainstem is working just in order to keep their body biologically alive. Now, such a person apparently can be laying in a hospital bed with their eyes wide open, staring blankly ahead of them, without any thought or awareness. And if somebody enters the room from a door at the side and walks across their visual field, this person's eyes will go across to the person entering the room, and their eyes will actually follow them, track them, as they walk across their visual field. And when the person walks back, their eyes will track them again until they leave from the door that they entered from, even though there's no conscious thought whatsoever. So the brainstem seems to have a really important role to play in scanning our environment, looking for things that are moving, for potential risks and dangers. So if you're walking along a bush track, deeply engaged in a conversation with the person that you're walking with, your brainstem is scanning your environment, looking for things that are wriggling on the ground in an action like that. Snakes. You're not aware of it because all you're aware of is the conversation that you're having, but your brainstem is nevertheless scanning your environment, looking for potential risks and dangers. Now the brainstem works in conjunction with the limbic system in order to create the fight or flight response, which you're probably familiar with. The fight or flight response is when your body and your mind has been physiologically prepared to respond to danger. So your heart starts racing, blood starts pumping out to your arms and legs, your mouth dries up, you might start to shake. It's all part of the fight or flight response. The emotions that go along with that can be extreme anxiety and fear, which then gives us the motivation to flight or to escape the danger. Or it might be extreme anger, which is the emotion that gives us the motivation then to do whatever we need to do to defend ourselves, start shouting or physically fighting back. And the limbic system works in conjunction with the brainstem to trigger this fight or flight response. Now, because the brainstem is scanning our environment for danger, for things that are moving, if we give the brainstem a job to do in EMDR, which is follow my hand backwards and forwards, scanning the environment for things that are moving, then it frees up the limbic system to then be able to get involved in the distressed emotion without triggering the fight or flight response. And what that does is allows your mind or your brain to basically deal with the distressed emotion relating to the bad memory without being overwhelmed in that fight or flight response, without hitting the panic buttons. Whereas usually a traumatic memory will bring a person to a fight or flight state, so the panic button has been hit. When we're giving the brainstem a job to do by following my hand backwards and forwards while you're in touch with those emotions, it takes the brainstem out of the equation, which then frees up the limbic system to be able to get involved in the emotions without being overwhelmed by the fight or flight response. And as a result of that, the brain can then start to do something very different with the distressed emotion. The other interesting thing is that distressed emotion tends to be a right hemisphere thing. And when we're doing bilateral stimulation, the eye movements are one form of that, it's stimulating the left and the right hemispheres of the brain alternating in an alternating pattern because your eyes are moving backwards and forwards. And what that seems to be doing with EMDR is that because the distressed emotion tends to be a right hemisphere location, but we start to stimulate the left hemisphere and the right, and the left and the right, and the left and the right through the hands going backwards and forwards, it seems to free up the brain from just being locked into that right hemisphere distress pattern.